Welcome back to Sailing El Jaleo. Grab a drink, climb aboard, and let's get going. Last week we finally pried ourselves away from Wrightsville Beach and we made the long haul up to Mile Hammock Bay. We stayed there for one night, and right now we're getting back on the road to head up to Beaufort, North Carolina. And that's going to end our coastal journey. From there we're going to be heading inland. And unbeknownst to us at this time, this was day 2 of about a 7 or 8 day forced march, if you will, where we traveled for 7 or 8 consecutive days, which for us is quite a lot. You know, when you're standing on the deck of a boat for 10 to 12 hours a day and manually steering the whole way, it gets a little taxing. Excuse me. But when you head inland, you get into these big rivers, the Neuse River, Pamlico River, the Pungo River, Alligator River, Albemarle Sound. Once you get into these regions, when the weather is good, you kind of have to travel. And when the weather is crappy, that's when we hunker down. But fortunately for us, I guess you could look at it either way, fortunately or unfortunately, the weather was good for, it was 6 or 7 consecutive days. So when the opportunity is there, we had to travel. We just couldn't pass that up. So we actually didn't stop. Once we left Wrightsville Beach, we didn't stop for, we didn't take a day off, I should say, until we made it all the way up to Bainbridge, Virginia. Just outside of the Mile Hammock Bay anchorage is the Onslow Beach Bridge, and that's a swing bridge. And there was a lot of anxiety around this bridge this spring travel season for boaters. There was a lot of drama on the VHF going up and down, rumors that the bridge had been struck by a barge and was damaged. That wasn't the case. They're actually just replacing the bridge. It looks like they're putting in a bascule bridge now, and there was a big drama about the schedule. Apparently the construction company had approved a schedule and had released it, and it was a very restrictive schedule. They would be closed like from 7 in the morning till 5 at night during peak travel season, which is really not ideal. But that schedule was never approved. I believe it's by the Army Corps of Engineers. Maybe it's the Coast Guard. I'm not sure who is in charge of that project. But anyway, it was a big drama. There was a lot of confusion. No one knew when the bridge was going to be open. I actually called the bridge tenders, and they didn't even know. They're like, I can tell you what our opening schedule is tomorrow, but I can't tell you beyond that, because they didn't even know. So there was a lot of confusion about it, but we squeaked through and everything was fine. As I was on approach to the Onslow Beach Bridge, something happened that was so rude. I have never ever experienced it before in 4 years. It's a little bit of a longer story, but I thought it would be worth sharing just because I could not believe that it happened. So there are a couple different categories of boaters. There are sailboats, and then there are boats that I call cabin cruisers. They're power boats, but they're people that do the exact same thing that I do, go up and down the Intracoastal Waterway. And, they just don't have sails. But they're all very respectful. They slow down when they pass. 99% of them are, 99.999% of them are perfectly fine. Same with sailboaters. You come across a rude sailboater every now and again. It's not like we're immune. I have bad days. I can get a little cranky on the radio once or twice, but there is another category, which is power boaters. I'll just call them that, and they've got the big yachts, and about 75% of them are courteous. So most people are courteous on the water. It's just what you do, you treat each other with respect and courtesy. And the way bridges operate is, I'm always on the slowest boat, so I get up earliest and leave, usually at first light. And I've always got goals in mind of where I want to be at certain times. And my bridge scheduling timing is very important to make it through the distance that I need to make that day. And the way a bridge works is if you're approaching a bridge, if the bridge has a set schedule, then you go through at that set schedule. If it opens at the top of the hour, 7, 8, 9, 10, then you go through then. No big deal. Life is good. And there are other bridges that operate on demand, and those can be a little tricky. So if let's say there's a bend coming up to the bridge, there are a lot of bridges that are just around bends and the bridge tender can't see behind it. So if I'm coming up to a bridge and I call the bridge and I request an opening, if there's a sailboat or any boat right behind me, but the bridge tender can't see them, I will let the bridge tender know there's a boat behind me. So, you know, you might want to take that into account for your opening, and, you know, they'll work it out. Now, there are bridges where there's a long straight stretch coming up to it and they can see the boat behind you. And it's up to the bridge tender. It's at their discretion if they want you to wait for the boats behind you. And I've got no problem with that. They know the traffic through the bridge. They know, you know, about how often they can open it as to not impede that traffic. And I don't want to put anyone out. Now, I've had to wait up to a half an hour for boaters behind me to get an opening at a bridge that's supposed to be on demand. And while that's a little bit frustrating, you know, it's the bridge tender's call. It is what it is. There's no point in getting angry about it. So, and that's you know, and the other boaters are all super courteous about it. You know, like if I get to a bridge and I request an opening and they know there's someone behind me, but they are like 20 minutes out, you know, 25 minutes out, they'll do their opening. And then if the second boat has to wait for the traffic to clear so they can go through, I mean, it's minimizing inconvenience for everyone else, the drivers and the boaters. You know, it's kind of a little dance, and we all understand that that's the way it works. So you take the bridge tender's judgment, and that's what it is. If he says you have to wait for them, if he says they're going to have to wait after you go through, that's just the way it works. And I've had every person in the last 4 years play by those rules, except for coming up to the Onslow Beach Bridge. I have never heard... I actually couldn't believe it when I heard. So, you know, you're on a different channel. Usually you're on channel 16. That's the international hailing channel. And I believe the bridge is here. We're on channel 9. So I was hanging out on channel 9. And coming up to the Onslow Beach Bridge, it is around a corner. So I let him know there's like 3 boats behind me, but they're a little further back. So it's up to him to do what he wanted to do. And I would accept the bridge tender's fate. But the sailboat that was behind me was about 20 minutes behind me, and he would have gotten there before the hourly time starts. So we were on demand at this point, and he would have made it there during the on-demand time. So it wouldn't have been a big deal. It wouldn't have been any impedance to him if the bridge tender let me through, closed, and then reopened for him. It would have been no problem. But the sailboat behind me actually called the bridge tender and asked the bridge tender if he would delay his opening for me until he got there. And I was actually dumbfounded. I couldn't believe that someone would be so goddamn rude that they would think that they could inconvenience you for their time. That guy got on the radio and he basically said, my time is more valuable than anyone else around me. I just couldn't believe it. I was absolutely dumbfounded. Yeah, I've never encountered that before. So if you've ever, fellow boaters, if you've ever encountered something like that, please leave a comment, because it couldn't be the only time. So, I mean, I know it seems like a little thing, but wow. Yeah, I just couldn't believe it. After spending a night in Adams Creek, it was time to start day 4 of our forced march, and this was going to be a little bit of a longer haul. We had to exit Adams Creek, and that spills into the Neuse River, and the wind was perfect this day. The Neuse River is always choppy. It's a very big river. It spills into Pamlico Sound, which is kind of basically the ocean. And I don't know exactly how wide the Neuse River is at its mouth. It must be maybe 12-ish miles wide. So it's a pretty big body of water. And from there you turn, you just hit the corner of Pamlico Sound, then you head back up the Bay River. And from there you enter a canal that goes by Hoboken, North Carolina. And I'm not exactly sure what the name of that canal is. It's not marked on my chart, and I've never looked it up. so I'm not exactly sure where it was. Or, I'm sorry, what its name is. But from there we just went up into Goose Creek, and Goose Creek normally spills out into the Pamlico River. But we didn't want to go that far this day, so we just peeled off to the side north of that canal, and we anchored for the night in Eastham Creek, where we had never stayed before, but it was a very pleasant spot. And that's all we have time for this week. I would like to give a massive shout out to my Patreon crew. Without your guys' support, I wouldn't make these videos. And my Patreon crew is Joan and Juddy Judnick, Val and Chris Alcorn, Denise and Eli Sackett, Sherry Erickson, Deb Shaw, Matthew Spotton, Peter Allen, and Natalie Linehan. Thank you guys so very much. Your support really means the world to me. I do have one legacy patron member, and her name is Joan Linbo. Unfortunately, she has passed on, but she lives on in our hearts forever. We really miss you, Joan. If you are interested in joining our Patreon crew, there is a link in the description down below, and that'll take you to our Patreon page where you can sign up. And there are hundreds, literally hundreds of extra videos and photos of our travels, and I try and keep everything there up to date and post at least once or twice a week, so it gives you a little peek behind the curtain. If you do like our videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. That'll help us out more than you'll ever know, and that actually doesn't cost you anything, so hit that like button. Alrighty, I hope you all are well, and we'll see you next week.